Story 1. This one night I was boosting some silverware from this old lady's house. She was home, but old people are pretty deaf and damn slow, so I didn't give a shit. I hear this strange sound coming from the room where she's watching TV, volume way loud grandma. So I go look and she's like having a seizure or some shit. I might be a thief, but I'm not a bastard. So I call 911. They answer. Shit. I don't know what to say. Hi, I was just robbing this old lady's house, and she's having a seizure. So I freeze and say nothing. I wait with her, but she stops seizing, and then I hear sirens, so I hide in her tiny front hall closet with the foldable doors and shutters. Before the EMTs arrive, she stops seizing. So by the time they get to her door, she seems fine, except confused about why they're at her house. They make nice, apologize, and leave. As soon as they're gone, she starts seizing again. Fuck. So I call 911 again, just in case. Really don't want a dead lady on my conscience. Same thing. Sirens. She stops seizing and answers the door. It's like a comedy at this point with me hiding in the closet, the bad guy with a heart of gold. But I'm not about to pop out and say, but she was having a seizure. So they leave. Just as they drive away, with her waving an old lady goodbye, she falls down and starts seizing again. Now it's just sad, funny. Gotta call 911 again for grandma, but this time, I'm thinking about leaving a note or something because I do want to get the fuck out of there. I call. Wait for the sirens. Then she stops breathing. Fuck. Fuck. I'm thinking if I don't get the fuck out of there, murder charge. I hide as the EMTs come through the door, put an oxygen mask on her, and take her away. By this point, my adrenaline is through the roof, and fuck it all. I feel like I've earned the right to take as much shit as I can walk out the door with. And since the house is now empty, I can take my time going through her stuff, silverware, jewelry, cash in a shoebox, you name it. If I can find it, it's mine. A fee for being a good Samaritan. Fuck if the EMT doesn't come back. Who the fuck knows why? I hide again. He walks into the living room, turns the TV off, and grabs a bag off her chair. This is the part that fucks me up. As he turns to go, an old man just appears out of fucking nowhere. Pats him on the back and whispers something to him, but the EMT doesn't react at all, doesn't turn around, doesn't pause, just heads back out the door like the old man isn't even there. Then the old guy glides to the front window and stands there, waving goodbye. Then he disappeared. I'm standing in the closet, frozen, wondering what the fuck just happened, and when I feel it. Somebody's breathing down my neck. Get out of my house. I started running, praying, crying, right out the fucking front door. I didn't care who saw. I ran like a bitch. To this day, whenever someone says, scared straight, I try not to remember the sound of that old man's voice. But I always do. Story 2. When I was 14, 33 now, I used to boost cars for this car theft ring in California. I did it for several months and never got caught. It was more of a thrill and lack of direction from living in a bad area and a lack of supervision and authority in my life. I had never been arrested or got caught. I was always a good kid, but I rebelled after my parents split up. Anyway, there was one car that I needed to pick up and get delivered that day. The boss man was extremely insistent that the order needed to be filled within a few hours. It was another job like any other. But when I was about a mile away from my order, I got a very uneasy and disturbing feeling. Nothing was out of the ordinary or different from the dozens of other jobs I'd done. But I couldn't shake the feeling. As I got closer to my destination, it was as if it just got noisier and more distracting in my head. Finally, that unsettling feeling overcame me, and I bailed out. I saw the car and acted like I wasn't paying attention. I didn't do the job. I kept going and knew I was in deep shit with the boss guy. I decided to lay low because not filling an order was seriously bad news. That guy was not someone you were disappointed or you would feel it. He was wrathful and on drugs. So I knew I had to hide for a while. 2 days of him blowing up my pager. Yeah, that's how long ago it was, LOL. Then the calls and pages suddenly stopped. Come to find out, word on the street was that the cops pulled a big sting operation and that the car I was supposed to steal was being monitored. My old boss sent some other kid to get the car, and they followed the kid back to the scrapyard and did a big bust. That guy got arrested. That kid got arrested. A whole boatload of people got pinched, but no one ever came for me. To this day, I know God was looking out for me. At that moment, at that time, and I listened. Since that incident, I never pulled any shit again. I straightened up, got back into school, and graduated with honors. It was all because of that weird, supernatural moment. Story 3. So I'm new in town. I get assigned to a warehouse since we're delivering a huge payload. No idea why they picked this location out of the available hundreds, since this warehouse is pretty old-fashioned. I'm talking about frosted windows, lots of vents, Victorian-era grates in the floors. The whole gig. It gives me the creeps, but I need the cash from this job. It's only one night, and I'm just a guy trying to get by. Just a few hours, right? That was my first thought. I should really think more. The first sign that things weren't going to end up well for us came pretty late at night, around 1 a.m. or so. My buddy Brandon and I are playing some shit to pass the time. I don't know, Go Fish or something. We start hearing this beeping noise, like a submarine blip. Blip, blip, blip. It drives us crazy after a couple of minutes, so Brandon goes to check it out. There's a shutter door about 20 feet behind where we're sitting, covers up an additional storage room, and it was muffling the noise. So when he pulls up the shutter, the beeping gets even louder. As soon as he gets near it, boom, knocked out cold. I'm not armed, so the best I can do is go near him to see what the hell just happened, and his face is white, completely pale, like he had just drained of his blood. I check to see if he's still breathing, and he is, so I nope the fuck out of there. I yell out that something happened to Brandon, and some other guys rush downstairs to where I am, save for one of the bunch. As they tried to help him out, I called for the guy who was still up on the second level to see if he needed any help. Now, keep in mind, in the split second I watched his group run down to where I was, he couldn't have gone anywhere. I saw him standing right there one moment, and in the next, he was gone, just vanished. I try to tell his group, but they're busy doing chest compressions or something. I wasn't about to head up there alone when I just saw someone disappear in front of my eyes, so I stayed right where I was. As I'm trying to contemplate what just happened, it gets really cold, really fast. It was like we were in a freezer. It was also quiet as fuck, which doesn't happen when you have a couple of human boulders moving pounds of cash onto an armored truck. That's when I realized that they were not making any noise. 2 more, just gone. The guys next to me choose now to perk up, and we can hear ourselves breathing. At that exact moment, I see out of the corner of my eyes this giant mass of something. I don't know what. You know when the lights go out for a split second or so, and you don't know if you're going crazy or something? Yeah, this was one of those things. Large, black, quiet. Absolutely not an animal. This thing had a wingspan of 10 feet or so. Whatever it was, it managed to completely block out the skylight for a whole second or so. So by this point, I'm freaking out, asking the other guys if I was going crazy or not. And they tell me they saw shit too. The group splits up and starts searching for the man down upstairs, as well as the 2 hulks who aren't loading money anymore. And I choose to stay down on the first floor, where it's safe and easy to exit like any rational person would do. I'll let natural selection have its go at the rest, I tell myself. In complete silence, another one of the guys upstairs starts screaming. And just like the first 3, as soon as we turn around to look for him, he disappears too. Just like that. By this point, I've had enough. I turn for another storage shelter near the exit, and the handle to the door is hot, like scorching hot. If you recall, we're freezing our asses off in this warehouse, while this random-ass fucking doorknob has just wiped the ass of a furnace. I felt like I was being preyed on. I couldn't hide even if I wanted to. Here I am, unharmed, unarmed, cold, terrified, and being taunted by whatever the fuck just made 4 grown-ass men vanish without a trace. About 20 good minutes pass by with no incident whatsoever while we're frantically searching for wherever our men went. They can't have left the building since we had clear instructions not to. They also didn't just leave, or we obviously would have known about it, or they would have told us. They're just gone. And then so are the lights. I hear bullets flying and flashes of light coming from a muzzle, and those sounds stop too. The building is essentially a sensory deprivation tank at 2:30 in the morning in the dead of winter, before both the lights and heat turn back on. No explanation. Buildings don't do that, no matter how old they are. Brandon is still knocked out cold, and the last 4 guys that aren't completely gone find graffiti on the frosted glass looking out onto the city. It clearly wasn't when we got here, because Brandon and I were looking through it earlier in the night talking about sports and shit. Now, it's covered with a fat-ass logo. Okay, mister. Getting the fuck out of here it is. We haul ass to the front door, which is locked from the inside for security purposes. And what do you know? The password to the pad they gave us doesn't work. So we do what any criminal would do at 3 in the morning. We bump the fuck out through the back window. And instead of freedom, we're greeted by 4 squad cars. At this point, I was relieved to see the police, since it was infinitely better than staying in there with a vampire. I have never felt more in fear for my life than that night. It was the first time I got first-hand experience with the local attraction, and also when I decided to start wearing brown pants that late at night. Story 4. In high school, my friends and I were into sneaking around abandoned places and places that weren't supposed to be. Rooftops, maintenance hallways in malls, recently completed homes, etc. There was this old church on the edge of town that had been empty all of my life. 17 years at this point. It's in a very upscale part of town and on a road that doesn't have a lot of through traffic, so it can feel pretty isolated out there. One day, my girlfriend and another friend of ours decided to check it out after school, so we met up and drove over in my GF's car. She was telling us these rumors about it, trying to freak us out, but we all liked the 3, so we pulled into the bottom of the driveway, which had a long chain across it, and a no trespassing sign. It's about 4 in the afternoon at this time, and we step over the old chain and walk up the driveway to a big parking area, maybe 50 yards up the road from the car. The whole place seems very empty, and it is very quiet. We can hear our footsteps clearly on the dirt and little else. We are looking at the exterior when suddenly a giant man with a beard hanging below his waist pops out of a bush not 10 feet to our left. No kidding, we would have heard him move up to it or seen him walking, but he suddenly appeared and started yelling at us to leave. I scream like a baby, involuntary soprano, and my GF tells him we are leaving immediately, and at that moment another big guy runs out from the side of the church and sprints right at us. We start running and notice that he isn't really headed for us, but for the road to block our escape. We round the bend in the driveway and see that our car has been blocked in by an old truck, and a third man is standing between us and our car, with 3 dogs leashed to his belt. We hadn't been gone for more than 3 minutes at this point, and the scene had drastically changed. We ended up running up the road until we lost sight of them, and then calling the police while hiding in the woods. 13 years later, I still have no idea how all those guys knew about us so quickly, how they emerged as they did, or how the hell a car appeared behind ours on a very quiet dirt road without us ever hearing it. Story 5. A little backstory. It was the end of fall '96 in Southern California. Not the beach areas everyone is used to, more up in the mountains. I bunked with a friend from back in uni. We were both avid ski enthusiasts and worked at the local resort during the winter season. Sometimes my friend and I, let's call him Doug, would get a little on the less sober end after 30 or 2 and go out for some B&E. Up in the mountains, especially right before the season starts, most people leave cabins vacant. So naturally, we only watched for wild animals as the local PD was laughably small. One night, particularly, is engraved in my memory. The frost had just started creeping over the ground, and the sun quickly crested the western peak. We decided it was time to go. A few hours go by, and the few houses we hit did not turn much. I was getting tired and a little hungover. Doug, however, wanted to end the night with something. I regret not pushing to go home. In the upper hills, larger, more expensive cabins perch overlooking the lake. Doug decided we could try up there. We eventually found a promising place and got to work. He is pretty handy with locks, and after about 10 min, we got the back door open. It was pretty empty, aside from the furniture with cloth over it, but clean. We knew it was maintained regularly. As we cased most of the main rooms, we headed upstairs. It was all very regular, until we got close to this door at the very end of the hall. We approached the door and it was locked. Unusual, as all the doors in the house aside from the entry doors did not have locks. He got excited and got to work right away. Few min and a click door creaks open. Just as this happens, a door at the adjacent end of the hall swings open. We shit our pants and run into the room we just unlocked, hoping for a window. At the time, I did not think about it, but we had been in that room, and it was completely empty. Anyway, we get into the room, and boom, window. The room is also pretty lit up from the moonlight now. I run to the window and work it open. As I'm climbing out, I turn and see Doug grabbing whatever he can get his hands on. I call out to him and he says, "This is the last chance we got." So we finally get out onto the roof after he stuffed his backpack. We make a beeline to his truck and race home. I was freaked out, as no one had ever been in a house we had hit. I wanted a shower and some sleep promptly. Doug was more interested in his findings. He called me over and dumped a few things from his pack. Nothing special really, just a few pieces of fake jewelry, a small box with some photos, and a small porcelain lighthouse painted blue. A few days later, Doug disappeared, and I had to move back down to the city as I couldn't afford the rent alone. Guess he got spooked and ran. Story 6. I don't consider myself a criminal. In fact, I pride myself in being a very ethical person. But one time I committed a minor crime that led me to think there may be some supernatural involvement here. I went to Hobby Lobby, a clearly Christian establishment, to buy some balsa wood. I needed 4 of 5 pieces, saw a 6-pack, and picked it up. When I went to the register, I realized that the cashier was charging me for only 1 piece. I guess it was not a 6-pack. It was probably the bulk packaging that came from the manufacturer, and the employees just never put them up. When I realized I was getting charged for 1 piece only out of the stack of 6, I decided to let it slide. I didn't point it out. I walked out with 6 pieces for the price of 1. Really, I stole 5 pieces. Fast forward a few days. I'm using a table saw to cut grooves in the wood to make some small gift boxes. I was doing a pretty decent job until I stopped to chat with a friend and have a couple of glasses of wine. I don't know what possessed me, other than boredom, to return to the table saw. The first cut took some skin off the tips of 3 fingers. Online, go to the ER for emergency stitching, get my tetanus shot, etc. Have surgery to reconstruct fingertips using cadaver skin. Shortly after, surgical wounds become infected with MRSA, more hospitalization and antibiotics. At this point, I'm starting to feel God's wrath. Mind you, I'm not Christian. I was only very superficially Catholic long enough to get my first communion and drop the whole idea at bat. But thinking about the chain of events that unfolded from 5 stolen pieces of balsa wood, I could not help but believe that this was a sign from a higher power. So I went back to Hobby Lobby, which one of the pieces of balsa wood. I asked to speak to the manager. I explained the situation to him and told him I went to pay for those other 5 pieces of balsa wood because I really needed to be done with it. I said it was a real load off my shoulders and I felt better after telling him that. He said it made him feel like a priest receiving confession. That was my first confession. It was not after a series of catechism classes nor at the indicated age, but it did happen as a result of learning a lesson. So I guess that counts, even if I am no longer Catholic. Story 7. Once after a night spent racing cars with friends, I started to drive home at 2 a.m. or so. I had to get on the southbound freeway through town, but accidentally got on the northbound at a point where the next exit was around 15 miles away. Not wanting to cross the center grass belt, I was just going to drive all the way and then turn around. I was doing about 90 miles/hour in a 2-door Geo Metro with brand new tires, northbound, then and through a construction zone, when I thought I saw a big pile of construction equipment on the road, so I swerved to avoid it. As I did, I started annihilating a bunch of plastic fence posts somebody put in place because they had cut out one lane of the freeway. I went to swerve out of the far right lane where I was, and the new tires having lots of grips, the entire car slipped and I was sliding heavily to the side, then backward, then got pulled into a massive roll by the momentum and ended up rolling 3 or 4 times off the side of the road. In a fucking 2-door Geo Metro. All I remember is floating through the middle of the car and thinking, my dad's gonna kill me. I blacked out and woke up again inside the car, upside down, on the grass belt, with my textbooks and stuff strewn across the road. I sprained a finger and didn't even hit my head. I crawled out of the door, called 911, and told them I'd been going 60.
Thanks for watching. Don't leave before leaving a like to this video. Also hit the subscribe button to support my work. And as always, have a horrific nightmare, my dear.